Today, I wanted to talk about PTSD from domestic abuse because a lot of people only relate PTSD to soldiers and firefighters and people that have been in like terrible, terrible situations where they've had to get involved and, they've witnessed horrific things or awful things have happened to them and they get diagnosed with PTSD. And a lot of people don't realize that you can actually get PTSD from domestic abuse. Never really heard of it before because nobody ever talked about it. And I firmly believe that all the while that we don't talk about these things, it allows them to continue. So my mission is to obviously talk about these things openly so that people that are stuck in these situations can actually get the help that they need. And so that people that aren't in these situations can maybe be a little bit more empathetic and sympathetic to the person that is being abused. So let me get started with this session for you. The information has come from a UK site all about PTSD. So post-traumatic stress disorder has been shown to occur as a result of domestic abuse. Unfortunately, intimate partner abuse is a far more common occurrence than most people would like to think, and it affects all genders, men, women, in between, non-binary specific. It affects lots and lots of people. And Women's Aid defined domestic abuse as an incident or a pattern of incidents of controlling, coercive, threatening, degrading, and violent behaviour, including sexual violence, in the majority of cases by a partner or ex-partner, but also by a family member or a carer. So traumatic events, like being a victim of domestic abuse, can often lead to shame and confusion, and particularly surrounding the way that we respond to it. We wonder why we didn't fight back or try to escape, and the reality is that we have little control over the defense mechanism of our brains. We all hear about fight or flight, but we don't hear about freeze, and we don't hear about fawn. And I know personally that my natural unconscious response is freeze. I freeze. I'm like a deer in the headlights. I hate it. I hate that that's my response. I wish I was fight or flight, one or the other. I just hate being freeze, but there is nothing I can do about it because that is my natural subconscious result. However, it very rarely happens nowadays because I'm not in an abusive situation anymore. So I have no need for it to happen. But when a victim escapes from their abusive partner, it can take so much time to adjust to a safe environment, and it's particularly true if the perpetrator was really controlling and or violent over a long period of time. When trauma is not processed properly, it can linger in the subconscious and cause severe psychological problems that inhibit a person's day-to-day life. And what they haven't put here is it can also cause physical problems. We all know that the stress hormone cortisol builds up when you are stressed, and when you are constantly stressed over a long period of time, that stress hormone actually can damage your body from the inside. It can cause problems with the nerve endings. It can cause issues like fibromyalgia. It can cause issues like heart attack. It can cause issues like high blood pressure. It can cause all sorts of damage within your body that are basically the problem coming from your subconscious and manifesting itself physically within your body. So it's not fun, trust me. I've got some of these. They're not fun to deal with, and I would far rather that other people didn't have to go through having them. So this is why I like to talk about this stuff. I know it's not the most happy subject in the world, but like I say, if people don't talk about it, it's going to continue to happen. So what are the symptoms of PTSD? So that includes intrusive memories of traumatic experiences, nightmares, and physical distress like sweating, trembling, or nausea. And there are some other symptoms as well, like avoiding people or places that remind you of traumatic experiences, ongoing anxiety or restlessness, including being easily startled, leading to irritability and sleep deprivation, Negative changes in beliefs, including loss of loving feelings towards others, a belief that the world is dangerous, and low self-esteem. So there's always this question of how on earth does domestic abuse cause PTSD? Because, only soldiers get PTSD. People are so dismissive of victims of domestic abuse, it makes me very cross. But PTSD can develop in anyone experiencing or witnessing a major life-threatening event. And this can include domestic abuse, as it exposes the victim to extremes of fear and vulnerability. The fear can become overwhelming during and after a period of abuse, and this can be exacerbated by the fact that the perpetrator remains close by, often for long periods of time. And not every person who experiences trauma will go on to get PTSD, and there are various protective and risk factors that can have an impact on whether or not PTSD develops. If the victim received emotional support after the traumatic event, this can help reduce the risk. But this requires close, trusted friends and family, or conscientious people nearby willing to intervene. And according to the National Institute of Mental Health, the risk factors that include the likelihood of PTSD include being female, the severity of the trauma, being injured, having past trauma, extremes of fear or helplessness, lack of support immediately after the event, having to cope with the additional stressors after the event, and a history of mental illness or addiction. So one of the questions would be, what can help after experiencing domestic abuse? Well, the very first thing that can help in the aftermath of an instance of domestic abuse is to seek an emotional support. And this could come from a trusted person like a friend or family member. And it's important to escape the situation if possible, because the longer you are exposed to that fear and danger, the more likely it is that symptoms of PTSD will occur. Unfortunately, the victim does not always have full control over their options when an intimate partner has been abusive. And in some cases, the abuser may even seek the emotional support of the victim after a traumatic event, which inhibits the victim's ability to care for themselves. And then we have the question of, well, what can we do about it? What treatments are there? So everybody is different. Every patient is different, and PTSD affects people in different ways. And a mental health professional with experience of PTSD must devise a treatment plan to treat the symptoms of the individual patient. Can't speak again. If the trauma is ongoing, such as when the victim is still in a relationship with the perpetrator, both problems must be addressed. It is unlikely to be possible to treat the PTSD if they are still experiencing the same trauma every single day. People who feel trapped or hopeless often experience other mental health issues like depression, addiction, and suicidal thoughts. And there is also the added complication of, if this abuse is ongoing, long-term, consistently happening, it can actually kind of tip over into a complex PTSD case, which is even harder to treat. So I think, we all say, well, why don't you leave? Why don't you just get up and leave? It's not always that easy. But what I'm saying here is that it's very real to have PTSD after living with domestic abuse. So it's really important to get the help and to get the support needed so that you can actually recover and go on to live a happy, healthy life instead of being held back by nightmares and flashbacks and constantly walking around in a state of fear. So what we say is that in most cases, PTSD is very, very treatable, and it's really important to seek help if you're experiencing symptoms. And then we have what should I do if I think I might be suffering from PTSD? Well, taking the first step to help yourself is really often the hardest thing to do. Trust me, I know it is impossible. From somebody who is extremely independent and self-sufficient, which apparently is a trauma response, I really found it really hard to acknowledge what I had gone through was real. I didn't want to talk about it because that kind of made it real. I didn't want to talk about the things that happened. I didn't want so many things. And by saying the things out loud kind of made it real, and I didn't really want to have to deal with it. I just kind of wanted to shove it in a box and stick it up in the cupboard and never talk about it or deal with it again. But unfortunately, that caused ramifications by just trying to ignore it, because that meant I ended up getting sick, and my body forced me to slow down and deal with everything. So, years of therapy and dealing with everything and getting that box that I put in that cupboard shelf unpacked and dealt with. And that's why I'm here now helping you guys, because I think it's really important that this gets heard. So, taking the first step is often the hardest thing, and understanding that it might take time for treatment to help, but you can get better. And the first thing to do is to book an appointment with your GP and speak about your concerns. And your GP will be able to perform basic screening and either make a referral to a mental health service or give you the details to self refer. And in the meantime, if you want to learn more about what you're experiencing, then there are plenty more articles on PTSD. And there's a PTSD UK website that you can go to. And there's also national domestic abuse helplines. There's local helplines. There's, if you Google your town and then put domestic abuse following your town's name, it will come up with your local domestic abuse service. And if you are in immediate danger, then you phone 911. There is no sort of no guilt needs to be attached to it. You're not doing anything wrong. You're not doing anything bad. You deserve to be safe. You deserve to be cherished and loved. You do not deserve to be beaten, no matter what you've done. And on that respect, if somebody is hurting you, talking to the police does not make it your fault. Talking to the police is basically holding them accountable for their actions and their behavior, because they created the problem, not you. You didn't cause this. It's not your fault. You did nothing wrong. And if you report them to the police and they get taken away, it is their fault, because they did this. And that's a really important thing to remember, because that guilt, that wish not to actually cause problems for the other person. Basically, I was too nice. I was too nice. Why was I too nice? I was such an idiot. Could have stopped it years before, but I was too nice. And it's kind of like that niceness that you have to get past. You have to kind of say, do you know what? I just need to do what's right for me. And this is what's right for me. So there are so many helplines, hotlines, etc., for whether you are the abused person or whether you have family that are being abused or friends that are being abused. It might not be a partner abusing you. It could be a family member. It could be a friend. It could be anything. But there are helplines out there. There are helplines available. And if it's an emergency or if it's happening right now, which just happened, phone 911 and start the ball rolling to get the help that you need. And I know that in the UK, when there is a lockdown, we are permitted to leave the house in order to escape a domestic abuse situation. So there is no penalty for doing that. I'm not sure what it's like in the States, but certainly leeway is given. So I think the important thing to remember is that it doesn't, if you don't get help for your PTSD straight away, it's not an all or nothing situation. Even if it's years later, you can still get treated for your PTSD. It's never too late to get help. And for some people, the first step might be watchful, waiting, then exploring the options available, like individual therapy, group therapy. But in the UK, the main treatment options in the UK are psychological treatments such as EMDR, the eye movement desensitization reprogramming, and CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy. So traumatic events like being abused can be very difficult to come to terms with. And sometimes it can become your new normal. It can become so twisted in your head by the other person that you accept what they're doing because you somehow believe that it's your fault or you are responsible for their behavior and their actions. And even if you have escaped, you might still have that issue with your self-esteem and your confidence that they have stolen away from you, and you need to work on getting it back so that you can actually start to enjoy life again. Just because we were in that relationship does not mean the rest of our life has to be miserable. There is a way out. I promise I'm living proof. There is a way out. If you want help, you know where you can go. You can Google. You've got national domestic violence hotlines. You have your GP surgery. You have your police station. There are so many resources available, and a lot of those resources open doors for other support as well. So please don't hesitate. Just get yourself to a safe place and call the people that can help you. And if you need to talk to somebody, I am quite happy. Just send me a message, direct message me, comment on my posts, any which way. I have got a website, which is www.jennyrockcoaching.com, and I will be more than happy to have a chat with you and to see what I can do, because my aim is to just help anybody that needs help. Okay, that's all I want to do, is to just help the people that need the help. So very simply, can you get PTSD from domestic abuse? Yes, you can. And if it's ongoing for a long time, then it can become complex. So it's never going to be easy to recover from, but it's well worth the recovery.